A Guten Erev Shabbos. If you hear the announcements in the morning in Shul, or if you notice the charts at the back entrance to the sanctuary reminding you which day of the Omer it is, and you yourself are counting the Omer, then you probably appreciate the reminder, or at least you're used to it and it's not too annoying. If you're not counting the Omer and you don't feel the vaguest notion of what it's all about, here's a little introduction to this practice and what it can mean and what it tells us about this time of year and also about ourselves. Now, isn't it an important idea to make every day in our lives count? It certainly is. Does anyone remember those page-a-day calendars people used to have on their desks with it had an upside-down U-shaped clip, and you would flip over today's page, and it would tell you, I don't know, Friday, May 17th, and the smaller, lighter print under that would tell you that today is the 138th day of the year, and there are 226 days left in the year, something like that. What's the big deal? Unless it's the end of December, and it helps you remember you have 11 days left to file a tax form or something. In other words, yes, every day counts. And at the same time, if we were to count each and every day, each day of the year from start to finish, to remind ourselves that each day is important, that counting would very quickly lose its impact. And we'd forget to take note of the fact that each day is important. So, what do, the Jewish people? We make a point of counting for 49 days, 7 complete weeks for one little portion of the year. And that awareness and focus that we give it for that little slice out of the year should imprint on us the idea that we should make every day count, even when we're not counting them as such. The biblical origin is in this week's parsha of Emor, which instructs us to count Sheva Shabbosos Temimos, to count 7 complete weeks from the very first harvest, which in Israel in temple times before greenhouse farming was the barley harvest that ripens right around Pesach time, counting 7 weeks until Shavuot, which is literally the festival of weeks. We read about Ruth and binding the sheaves in the field and the threshing floor, all the more to recall our agrarian roots. In fact, the Abarbanel says this is exactly what the counting is for, to remind people who are working in the fields to remember to pause and go up to Jerusalem for Shavuot, which is one of the 3 pilgrimage holidays when you're supposed to go up to our eternal and undivided capital and bring offerings in honor of Yom Tov. Now, in the past couple hundred years, as Jews have been doing less farming, there's been this added bonus of counting the 49 days of Pesach till Shavuos, which is a spiritual template sort of overlaid over the whole thing. There's the 7 weeks of counting, 7 days per week, obviously, and there are 7 parallel emotional attributes according to the mystical trend in Jewish thinking. These also could be thought of as divine attributes, midot of Hashem, so to speak, or the way maybe we perceive God, things that we see reflected in ourselves. Namely, those 7 are Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, or approximately loving kindness, justice, and harmony, endurance, humility, bonding, and nobility. So, in this little schema of talking about one of each of those embedded in each one of the others, which is 7 sevens, that's math even I can do, you have 49 combinations. So, by melding these together, the actual counting the days and the weeks, and this little spiritual exercise, you get to work on a part of yourself, your life, your relationships with others and with God. It's truly fun for the whole family. And people get to write and publish books about it. Everyone from the latter day mystics to the late great Joe Lieberman, who just passed away a few weeks ago, and I believe was the only Orthodox Jewish senator in United States history. And it gives us something to talk about. And then there's another dimension that we don't talk about too much. That's the angle of religious politics. Counting the Omer is also a statement of loyalty, of belonging. It's an affirmative statement of membership in the community of rabbinic Judaism. Really? Such a big deal? Here's how it works. It's in this week's portion of Emor again, and we read it just the other week on the second day of Pesach. Also, if you'd like another reminder, we'll be reading it again on the second day of Sukkot. Here's what the Torah means. It's chapter 23, verse 15 of Leviticus, our fourth Aliyah of our Sedra this week. It instructs us like this: you shall count for yourselves from the day after Pesach, from the day when you bring the Omer offering, 7 complete weeks. Until the day after the 7th week, you should count 50 days, and you should offer a new meal offering to God. That's what these two verses mean. What they say in the words is this: Usfartem lachem mimacharas hashabas miyom haviachem es omer hatnufa sheva shabasas tamimos tiyenes. The first one. Okay, we learned from this that you should count for yourselves, meaning everyone should do it. Don't rely on somebody else to do it for you. And they should be complete weeks, not missing anything. That is why we start Shavuot late at night. So the 7 weeks leading up to it are complete. They won't be missing an hour or two. And that Shavuos, the festival of weeks, takes place on the 50th day, Pentecost, as it has been translated sometimes. But the question remains, what about that phrase at the very beginning? The Torah did not exactly say the day after Pesach, or the day after Chag, or the day after Yom Tov. What it said is, take a look in the text, Mimacharat HaShabbat, from the day after Shabbat. From context, since the preceding verses are talking about Pesach, the context of counting the Omer is from the day after the first day of Pesach. That's Chol HaMoed in Israel, second day Yom Tov in Toronto. But not everyone saw it that way throughout Jewish history. There were a group of people called Tzedukim, Sadducees. They translate them if that helps. You might call them literalists or fundamentalists, maybe. Sola scriptura types. Just tell us the scriptures. Don't give us the whole pirush, the whole commentary. They said, wait, if it says the day after Shabbat, it must mean the day after Shabbat. So what did these folks do? They made the Seder, and then they started observing the intermediate days of Pesach, and whenever the next Shabbat was, they started counting the day after Shabbat, which meant the first Sunday of Pesach. Now, a few years ago, we made the Seder on Friday night, so the first Sunday after the Seder would have been the next day. Shabbos was the first day of Yom Tov, Sunday the day after that. And we started counting the Omer that night on that year. They probably would have counted that day too. So good. Or maybe they waited another Shabbos and then started. Who knows? But this past year, a couple of weeks ago, we made the first Seder on Monday night. So we started counting the Omer Tuesday night, and we're right in the middle of counting 49 days until Shavuos. But these fundamentalists, these literalists, Tzedukim, would not have started until the following Sunday, Saturday night, whatever. So they'd be 4 days behind us. So their Shavuos would be 4 days after ours. And that doesn't make any sense, because we know the Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan. So do the math, Tzedukim. You have to start counting the day after Pesach. There's a Gemara in Menachos that recounts the conversations of our sages, the rabbis of blessed memory, who examined all the evidence. They studied these verses, and they decided the halacha, the path that we should follow. Not to say that the counter-argument didn't have merit. Macharat HaShabbat, the day after Shabbat, seems to mean Sunday. But this one held greater weight. We start counting the Omer on the second day of Pesach. We count 7 weeks. The next day is Shavuos. Now, you may have heard that some people aren't all too keen on listening to what rabbis tell them. This was the position of the Tzedukim, these Sadducees. They said, why can't we just do what makes sense to us? Why can't we make meaning of it however we see fit? Well, it's a free country, at least here and now it is, and you can do whatever you want, or don't do anything if that's what you want. But the question is, how much do you want to be part of the Jewish people? Do you want to get on the train with everybody else and get on the way, or do you want to be by your righteous self still standing on the platform at the station when the train pulls out? And here's our big question, which actually came up in one of our class discussions this week. We know we can put our trust in Hashem. God is our rock, our redeemer, source of life, origin of truth, all existence. To put our trust and faith in God is really, on the face of it, a no-brainer. Who else are you going to trust? It's not the question here. Here we have a question of putting our trust in people, other human beings, Jews, rabbis, who for most of history were men, by definition imperfect, fallible, right? Can we say people who even make mistakes from time to time? Yes, we can, because we have a whole tractate in the Talmud about what happens when the Jewish Supreme Court makes a mistake. They examine the evidence, they pronounce a ruling, and it's erroneous. It's later shown to have been incorrect. Fascinating. The question put to us is, even considering that, even knowing that sometimes people make mistakes with the best of intentions, can you still put your trust in other people? Can you still join on into the Jewish community in a chain of tradition that stretches back 3,336 years in unbroken succession? We can tell you the names of the people in each generation who received it and who made it relevant in their times and passed it on to the next generation of students, whether they were in Babylon or Babkajan, in Pickering or Pretoria or Peterborough, wherever they were. Our belief is that the Torah always has guidance for us, always has insight and wisdom for us, always has a light to illumine our path. And in our response to that question, we find our place in the Jewish community. It is a free country, and we are free people. And the choices that we make as free people say a lot about us. What, in fact, will we choose to do? Great poets and writers and thinkers have teed up this question for us. What will we do with our one precious life, with our precious days and hours? How can we fill them with meaning and connection? Some believe that every man is an island, to paraphrase another great poet, that we just have to follow our inner voice and go wherever it leads us. We would be more sympathetic to the idea that no man is an island, nor any woman either, that we are connected and we're responsible and answerable and accountable for all that we do and for all that we fail to do or choose not to do, for what we listen to and what we ignore, for the opportunities we take advantage of and for those we leave by the wayside. We can be sure that in holding the Jewish people and Jewish life close, holding on to small details, seemingly small details like Sfira Omer, and the idea of making every day count, we're also making ourselves count. In the forward march of Jewish history, we're holding ourselves close to the source of meaning, the source of truth, the giver of the Torah, the source of life and sustenance. May God grant us speedily all the blessings of good health and joy, and the most precious blessing of peace, the sooner the better. Shabbat Shalom.